The distance between us then was dangerously close. I could make out every detail on Connor's face, the faint tension along his jaw, his eyes never leaving me, and the way he was trying to stay in control, but not quite succeeding. If he moved even a little closer, everything would cross a line. I knew that, and so did he. "Jake," he said softly, as if raising his voice even slightly would shatter this fragile moment. I swallowed. "Don't," I whispered. I wasn't sure what I was telling him not to do. "Don't come closer. Or don't pull away." Connor held my gaze for one long second. Then he stepped back. Just one step, but enough to break everything. The air between us seemed to collapse, returning to reality, colder, clearer, and a little more painful. "We should stop here for today," he said, his voice settling back into calm. I nodded, even though part of me didn't want this session to end like that. "Your assignment," Connor said, turning back to his desk. "Revise the middle section. Don't avoid it." "Yeah," I answered, my voice coming out rough. Neither of us mentioned what had just happened, but we both knew it had happened. I left the classroom with my head spinning. I had almost let things go too far. In a classroom, with my own teacher, I should have felt scared. I should have felt regret, but the only thing I could feel was, I wanted to go back. Damn it. The days that followed became strange. Connor kept his distance. Not the cold kind from before, but controlled. He still taught, still engaged with the class, but with me, he was more careful. He didn't stay after class. He didn't create private moments, as if he was trying to undo the mistake of that day. And I started losing focus. I noticed myself watching him more, picking up on small details, the way he held his pen, the way he furrowed his brow when thinking, the way he unconsciously touched the back of his neck when stressed. I hated that I noticed so much, but I couldn't stop. A week later, we had to submit our revised essays. I had done what Connor said. I didn't avoid it anymore. I wrote more clearly, more deeply, more honestly, and that made the piece more dangerous than ever. I knew that if anyone read it carefully, they'd realize this wasn't just a fictional story. This was me. This was us. But I submitted it anyway, because part of me wanted him to read it. 3 days later, it was handed back. I opened the file while sitting in the library. My heart was beating fast as I scrolled to the comments. Connor hadn't written much, but every line was sharp. "You went straight toward what you feared. This is the best version of this piece. But," I paused at that word, "you're still holding something back." I frowned. Holding back? I had written everything. I scrolled down. There was one final line. "If you truly want to understand this story, don't just write it. Live it." I went still. What was he saying? That night I received an email from Connor. Subject, "About your essay." I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening it. The message was brief. "Jake, if you'd like to discuss your essay further, I'll be in my office tomorrow evening." Connor. That was all. Nothing more. But I knew it wasn't simply about discussing an essay. He didn't need to send a separate email. He could have said it in class. But he hadn't. I stared at the screen, heart racing. This was a chance to talk, or a chance to ruin everything. I should have declined. I should have deleted the email and pretended I never saw it. But instead, I typed, "I'll be there." Connor's office was on the 3rd floor of the faculty building. A small, quiet space with a window overlooking the campus. When I arrived, the light was still on. I stood outside the door for a few seconds, took a breath, then knocked. "Come in," his voice came from inside. I opened the door. Connor was sitting behind his desk, laptop open, a few books stacked neatly beside him. He looked up when he saw me, and in that moment, every memory of that night came rushing back. Not the classroom, not the distance, but us. "You came," he said, his voice low. "Yeah," I answered. I closed the door behind me. The click sounded small, but enough to make my chest tighten. A closed space. Just the two of us. Again. Sit down, Connor said. I pulled out a chair and sat across from him. The distance this time wasn't too close, but not far enough for me to feel safe. Your essay, he began, turning the laptop toward me, is very good. You already wrote that. I wanted to say it in person. I gave a small nod. You said I was holding back, I said. I don't understand. Connor looked at me, not like a professor, but like, Connor, you haven't written about what you want, he said. I frowned. I wrote about my feelings. You did, he nodded. But you only wrote about what happened. So what else is there? Connor was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, what do you want to happen next? That question hit me directly. I didn't answer right away, because I knew if I answered honestly, everything would change. Connor didn't push. He just watched me, waiting. And finally, I spoke. It doesn't matter. It does, he said gently, very much. Why? Because that's the part you're running from. I clenched my hands. I'm not running. Then say it. I looked at him for a long time, then said, very quietly, I want for that not to have been just one night. The air in the room shifted completely. Connor didn't look away. And? He asked. I swallowed. I want more time with you. For the first time, I had said that, not in my head, not in an essay, but directly to him. Connor exhaled slowly, as if he had been waiting for those words. Jake, he said, his voice dropping. Do you know what that means? I know, I answered. And that's why I've been trying to stop. But you can't stop. I shook my head. No. A silence. Then Connor stood up. I tensed instinctively. He stepped around the desk, moving toward me. Not quickly, not urgently, but not stopping. We're standing at a line, he said, pausing one step away from me. And if we cross it, I know, I cut in. Jake, I know, I repeated. But I also know that if I walk out of here without saying it, I'll regret it. Connor looked at me for a long time. Then he asked, are you sure? I took a breath. And this time, I didn't step back. Yes. My yes fell into that small space like a vow. No turning back. Connor stood one step away, not too close, but close enough for me to feel his presence warm, solid, and dangerous. Jake, he said, his voice dropping lower, if we move past this, we can't go back to how things were. I gave a short, humorless laugh. We're already past how things were. Connor didn't deny it. He knew. So did I. There are rules, he continued, slipping back into the role of a professor. There are boundaries. If anyone finds out, I can transfer out of your class, I said immediately. Connor went still. You've thought about that? I've thought about every way to not have to sit in your class, while still not having to give this up. The air grew heavier. Jake, he said slowly, you shouldn't have to change your academic plans because of me. I'm not doing it for you, I replied. I'm doing it because I don't want to keep pretending anymore. Connor looked at me. The expression in his eyes was no longer control. It was struggle. I tried to stop, he said quietly. I told myself that night was just a beautiful mistake. Something that shouldn't happen again. Then why did you send the email? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then said, because I read your essay. And realized I wasn't the only one affected. My heart beat harder. Connor. I shouldn't want this, he said, but I still do. That sentence was a spark. I stood up. The distance between us disappeared. No desk, no chairs, just two people, face to face with everything they had been holding back. Then stop holding back, I said, barely above a whisper. Connor looked at me, longer than any time before, as if searching for one last reason to stop. But he didn't find one. And then, he touched me, not urgently, not forcefully, just his hand, resting lightly on my wrist. But that sensation made my entire body go taut, exactly like that night, but this time, clearer, more deliberate, more dangerous. Jake, he said, his voice gone rough. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and this time, I was the one who stepped closer. The distance vanished entirely. His breath reached me, I could feel my own heartbeat fast, strong, uncontrolled. "We should stop," Connor said. But his voice held no certainty. "You don't want to stop," I answered. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if fighting himself. Then when he opened them, everything was clear. He didn't step back. This time, he moved forward. The moment his lips touched mine, every rational thought dissolved. It wasn't like that night. Not curiosity. Not accident. It was a choice. We knew what we were doing, and we did it anyway. The kiss deepened. Not rushed, but full of everything that had been suppressed for weeks. I pulled him closer, fingers curling lightly into his shirt as if afraid that letting go, he might disappear. Connor responded, no longer keeping distance, no longer holding back like before. Only us. The small space of his office felt too confining. Not because of its size, but because of what was happening inside it. Connor was the one who pulled back first. He drew away, his breathing slightly unsteady. "We can't stay here," he said. I understood. Not because he wanted to stop, but because this place wasn't safe. "My apartment," he said almost immediately, "is not far." I didn't hesitate. "Let us go." We didn't say much on the way, just walking quickly side by side, as if both of us knew that if we stopped to think, one of us would turn around, but neither of us did. Connor's apartment was the same as before, neat, warm, familiar in a strange way, but the feeling this time was completely different. No longer two strangers, but two people who had tried to avoid each other and failed. The door had barely closed when Connor pulled me back. No distance, no hesitation, only feeling. That night was nothing like before, not because it was more intense, but because it meant more. We didn't need many words, didn't need to pretend, just being together, real, clear, and dangerous. Afterward, we lay beside each other, like before, but not like before. I turned my head to look at him. Connor was staring at the ceiling, as if turning something over in his mind. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, then said, "That tomorrow things will be complicated." I smiled faintly. Tomorrow is always complicated. Connor turned toward me. "No regrets?" I shook my head. "None. Even if this causes trouble?" I knew that from the start. A pause. Then I asked, "What about you?" Connor looked at me. No hesitation left in his eyes. "No," he said. My chest eased. But then he added, "But I'm worried." "So am I," I admitted. We lay in silence. Neither of us said more. But we both knew this was only the beginning of something more complicated. The next morning, I didn't leave early. This time, I stayed. And when Connor woke up, the first thing he saw was me. He didn't say anything, just looked at me, then gave a small smile. Not the smile of a professor, but Connor's smile. And in that moment, I knew something more dangerous than anything that had happened. I didn't just want more time with him. I was starting to want something more than that. That morning should have made me panic. I woke up in Connor's apartment, early light filtering through the curtains, casting a soft gold over the room. Everything was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. But instead of panic, I felt at peace. Connor lay beside me, hair slightly disheveled, his face more relaxed than I had ever seen it. No trace of the composed professor. No distance. Just him. I propped myself up on one elbow and watched him for a moment. This is a mistake. A very clear mistake. But also right in a way that made no sense. Connor opened his eyes. His first glance settled on me. No surprise. No confusion. Just a very faint smile. "Morning," he said, his voice still a little rough. "Morning," I replied. A short pause. Not awkward. Just both of us fully aware of what had happened. "You didn't leave," Connor said. "No," I gave a small shrug. I figured. This time there was no need. He held my gaze a moment longer. "This time is different," he said. I nodded. Different. We didn't need to say more. Both of us understood. But reality didn't wait long. We have class this morning, Connor said, glancing at the clock. I went rigid. Right, class? Same room, same roles, everything coming back. We should. I started. Keep our distance, he finished. I exhaled. Like before? Connor shook his head slightly. Not entirely. I frowned. What do you mean? He sat up, turning to look at me. In class, we're still professor and student, he said. That doesn't change. And outside? Connor was quiet for a moment, then said, we'll have to be careful. Not stop, but careful. My heart beat faster. So, I asked, not entirely certain. So we don't pretend this doesn't exist, he said. Part of me felt relieved, the rest of me felt more unsettled. Class that morning was a test. I sat in my usual seat, trying to hold a neutral expression. Connor came in as always, teaching, explaining, engaging with the room. No one in the class knew that just hours before, we had been together, and that was exactly what made everything so tense. Every time he called my name, even just asking about an assignment, my heart skipped a beat. Every time our eyes met, something was different. Not obvious, but enough to make me look away first. Jake, what do you think about this passage? I startled slightly. I looked down at my materials, trying to focus. I think the character is avoiding confronting his real feelings. Connor nodded. Exactly. A small pause, like when we know what we want, but choose the safer option. I went still. He had just said that in front of the whole class. No one noticed, but I did. Damn it. After class, I didn't stay. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew. If I stayed, I wouldn't be able to keep the distance we needed. But by afternoon, I got a message from Connor. Are you free tonight? Just one line, but enough to make me stop for a few seconds. I should have said no. I should have said we needed to slow down. But instead, I replied, free. We didn't meet at his apartment. Instead, a small cafe a few blocks from campus. Far enough that we wouldn't run into other students. Quiet enough to talk. Connor was already there when I arrived. Sitting in the corner in a simple jacket, no trace of the professor from class. Just, Connor, you came, he said. Yeah. I sat down across from him. A brief silence, but this time, not tense, just both of us looking for where to begin. We need to talk, Connor said. I nodded. I think so too. He leaned back in his chair, watching me. This can't run on emotion alone, he said. We need clarity. I know. Are you sure you want to keep going? He asked. I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know, but because I knew. My answer would change everything. I don't want to go back to how things were, I said. Connor looked at me. But I don't want to ruin my future either. I continued. Ours, he corrected. I paused. I'm not sure we have an ours, I said honestly. Connor didn't react right away. He just watched me as if weighing every word. Then let us find out, he said. In circumstances like these, he confirmed. I exhaled. Do you know how hard that is? I do, he said. But I also know. Doing nothing is harder. I let out a small laugh. Is that how you always talk? Only when I believe what I'm saying. A silence. Then I asked, have you ever felt like this before? Connor shook his head. Not with a student. I mean, the feeling. He was quiet for a moment, then said, not like this. My chest pulled slightly. And you? I shrugged. I've liked people before, I said. But never this complicated. Connor smiled quietly. We really did choose the hard path. Yeah, I said. But it seems neither of us is good at choosing the easy one. He looked at me. That expression. There it was again. Jake, he said, his voice dropping lower, if we do this, I don't want it to only be secret meetings. I frowned. What do you want? Connor didn't deflect. You. The answer was too direct, too honest, and too dangerous. I looked at him, heart pounding. You can't have me in any normal way, I said. I know. Then why do you still want to? Connor smiled faintly. Because normal isn't what I'm feeling. I didn't know what to say. only knew that everything was going further than I had ever imagined. And this time, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. I thought I understood this situation clearly. A relationship with wrong timing. A dangerous choice. Something that needed to be controlled. But sitting across from Connor in that cafe, I realized I had underestimated everything. Not because the feeling was weak, but because it was too strong. What are you thinking about? Connor asked, pulling me out of my thoughts. I exhaled softly. That this is becoming more real than I expected. He nodded. Same. A simple answer, but enough to make me feel not alone in this. So what do we do? I asked. Connor didn't answer right away. He looked out the window for a moment, people passing by, streetlights beginning to glow as the sky darkened. Then he turned back. We can't be public, he said. Obviously. But I also don't want to hide you like something to be ashamed of. That caught me slightly off guard. You don't think of it that way? I asked. Connor frowned. No, I'm your student. And you're also someone I care about, he replied. My heart gave a small tremor. I said nothing. Connor continued. We'll have to set boundaries. Like what? No meeting on campus grounds outside of class, he said. No texting anything. Too obvious when we're around other people. I laughed softly. That sounds like a secret operation. It is, he shrugged. I looked at him. Are you okay with that? Connor thought for a moment. Not entirely, he admitted. But for now, it's the only way. I nodded. Okay. A pause. But this time, not heavy, just both of us accepting reality. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. During the day, we were professor and student. Clear, distant, controlled. At night, or whenever we could, we were Connor and Jake. No titles, no boundaries, just two people trying to understand each other. We met in places unconnected to school, small cafes, quiet parks, his apartment. Some evenings were nothing but conversation. Sometimes no words were needed. And the more time I spent with him, the more I recognized something dangerous. I wasn't just drawn to him. I was falling. You're distracting me. Connor's voice cut through a class session. I startled. Sorry, I said. The class laughed quietly. I'm referring to this passage, he said, pointing at the screen, as if he had just said something entirely ordinary. But his eyes, only I understood. Damn it, I looked away, fighting back a smile. This was the problem. We were starting to get used to this, used to hiding, used to looking at each other in ways no one else could read. And that made everything easier, while also making it more dangerous. One evening, I stayed in Connor's apartment later than usual. We had just finished watching a film. The lights turned low, the room quiet. I was stretched out on the sofa, and he was sitting beside me. Do you ever think about where this is going? I asked, still looking up at the ceiling. Connor didn't answer right away. I've been trying not to think too far ahead, he said. Why? Because our future. Isn't simple. I turned to look at him. You always say our, I noted. Connor smiled faintly. Should I stop? I shook my head. No. A pause. Then I asked, have you ever thought about telling someone? Connor frowned. What do you mean? A friend? A colleague? Anyone? He shook his head immediately. No. Why not? Because they won't see what we see, he said. They only see a problem. I went quiet, because I knew he was right. And you? He asked. I haven't told anyone, I answered. And I don't know if I should. Connor nodded. Maybe. The time isn't right yet. I exhaled. It seems like everything with this is the time isn't right yet. Connor smiled softly. Maybe. He looked at me. His eyes softer than usual. But that doesn't mean it isn't real. My chest tightened. I know, I said. And that was exactly the problem. A week later, things began to crack. Not between me and Connor, but from outside. Class that day ran normally, until another professor walked in midway through. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said. Connor, I need a word. Connor nodded, turning to the class. Continue with your work. I'll be right back. He left. The door closed, and the atmosphere shifted. A few students began whispering. I heard their an internal review, someone murmured. Why? Not sure. Something about a complaint. My heart dropped. A complaint? About what? I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was unrelated, maybe just an administrative matter. But part of me knew that this couldn't stay hidden forever. And perhaps our time was beginning to run out. Connor came back after about 10 minutes. His expression still composed, but I noticed something was different. A tension he was trying to conceal. Class continued, but it wasn't the same as before. And when the bell rang, I knew everything was about to change.